Go on. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is Monday, September 18th, 2023. It's a little after 7 o'clock. We're in Town Hall in Hanover, New Hampshire, and we're going to do good business for the town and have fun at it too. Thank you. I was trying to remember. Yeah, it's important to get that done. So, just looking at our agenda, we have opening of the meeting, which we've done. We have public hearing, which we have none today. We have an agenda review. We're going to use this as a little bit of other business to discuss. One item we may or may not act on tonight. We're trying to figure that out. And this has to do with two parking issues. I forgot the name of the lot down by the Visual Arts Center. Is that lot 7? Lot 7. Thank you. We are contemplating changing the hours of that lot. Excuse me, not the hours. The duration of the meters or the public park mobile situation from 3 hours to 10 hours, which is what it used to be approximately 4 years ago, pre-COVID, and it was changed during the era of COVID, which we're still in, and being underutilized, we've recognized that one thing that would be helpful, I think, for long-term parkers would be to extend that back to 10 hours. That is one issue we are talking about under agenda review as other business. And the other item is changing the parking garage from fee-based to a free system on Saturdays. Sounds like it's a huge change, but in fact it's not, as the loss of revenue on Saturdays is incredibly minimal, and we are not staffing it due to staffing shortages. Therefore, it's actually somewhat of a net positive look from a financial situation. So the question that arises before the board is to take up these two issues, and we are trying to figure out whether or not we needed to have them formally noticed on the agenda, which they are not. Jenny, you were looking at an ordinance?
Oh yeah, our ordinance 6 said the Board of Selectmen may, after providing notice to the general public, by resolution, establish or modify the location of areas designated Independence A or B, which are metered lots on the street and lots containing and establish or modify the time limits of parking meters located adjacent to these meters. So this is the question right up here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does seem pretty clear in the sentence.
For notice.
For notice,
right?
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
so
I suggest we do it at our next
Just 1
meeting.
second.
Okay.
What was your thought?
no, I was just the notice in public hearing, but I understand. Yeah, there was a few questions, right? It's not a public hearing, but advance notice.
That's right. Advance notice. Okay. So, thank you, Joanne. I'm sorry to cut you off.
So it's $100 like per Saturday.
So $100 to $200. Yeah.
About how much for the year then? Is it like a whole $5,000?
Yeah, which is less than what we would pay someone to staff it that whole time.
Yeah. When was the last time it's been staffed?
Either currently or very recently. There is somebody in the
Just thought at the
parking
last
garage.
meeting that we said it wasn't being staffed, and it hasn't been staffed, and that was maybe why the revenue was low. I mean, it hasn't been staffed on Saturday.
I'm not sure the last time, although I guess if
I
we're
thought it
talking
was a
about
while ago.
future meeting. Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Regardless.
I actually got feedback from somebody who said if we had a credit card machine there, they personally would pay more because sometimes they don't have cash.
Yeah.
And they mean to go back, and they sometimes do and sometimes don't.
Alex, you were commenting on how the honor system was actually pretty admirably working, which is nice to hear.
That it worked at all is
Yes.
sort of interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so given the fact that we haven't noticed it, I think we should move it to, thank you, as Joanne suggested, to the next meeting. So that,
Can I just ask one question?
please.
Part of some changes that were happening was to change the parking fee at 63 South Main Street, that deck behind the Bank of America, from
3 to 10.
3 to 10, and I don't think that should happen. I think it should be 3 hours. I don't think we should change it. And I would be interested to hear why that you would do that, because from
Wait, sorry, you're not talking about lot 7?
Lot 7 over there changed from 3 to 10 hours,
Okay.
yes. I had heard that 63 South Main had signs changed on it from 3 hours to 10 hours.
Right.
And I think that that's not a good idea based on when we have our biggest rush in town is like from 11:30 to 1:30 for lunch. And that's a really convenient location for people to park. And so I think that our businesses would probably appreciate 3-hour parking in that lot versus having town employees parking there for 10 hours.
So the feedback from our parking staff was basically that because we've got a lot of employees, like business employees who park in 3-hour and feed the meters all day, the goal, and we've actually successfully got one person into the 10-hour spots from the 3-hour spots, but the goal is to move them over to the 10 hours to open up 3-hour parking that's closer to the downtown.
Right.
That's the thinking.
But 63 South Main is like right behind here.
Right.
So I feel like that's downtown and we should not be changing it from 3 hours to 10 hours.
So 63 South Main, saying
Should-
3, but
should stay
lot
3.
7,
Should go to 10.
Okay, okay.
That makes a lot of sense, Joanna. Alex, you need a new right rear view mirror.
That was a rented motorcycle in Rwanda, so
Okay.
not mine. But perhaps, yeah, trying to get this video queued up.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very helpful. And these are important little steps that are important. We can skip item number 4, as I don't believe we have any announcements. And then item number 5 is public comment. I don't believe we have any one who wants to speak for public comment tonight. And then we get to business requiring a discussion. And this involves 4 different items.
I have 3. Am I looking in the wrong place?
I don't know, I'm looking on paper.
Should be 4.
You should have 4.
I'm on 6.
Okay.
Anyway, the first item is fiscal year 24-25 budget timeline and update. Alex, you did supply us with a little more updated information. That was much appreciated. Do you want to just, I think it's in the back of our packet right here.
Hey, do you want me to run through the dates? Or?
No, I don't think we need the
Okay.
dates, just sort of just a 40,000 foot view.
So the shortest story here, we talked a little bit about last time. I put all the dates that we've got at this point in the memo, and that's available if anybody wants to see it on the website too. But basically September is sort of getting ready a little bit. And in October, we'll have our goal setting workshop for the select board. We'll have a formal budget check-in on October 23rd. So that's definitely an important meeting for everybody to be aware of, because that will be a discussion of select board priorities, ARPA funding, and what we're proposing to use ARPA funding for. An update on the Capital Improvement Program Committee will have met at least once or twice by then. There'll be a tax rate discussion and hopefully some high-level forecasting. So 23rd will be a budget-heavy meeting. And then as we get into October and November, we'll start soliciting requests from department heads for operating capital. By November, December, we'll start to be discussing compensation and staffing changes from the recruitment and retention study, and beginning conversations with the collective bargaining units. And then December, January is kind of all the work on the budget, and then the tracking is towards February, doing some sort of budget presentations that we haven't quite figured out the format yet. And then similar to last year is that will be a draft, and that we'll be looking for feedback. Hopefully it'll be slightly smoother than last year, but I'm sure we'll get a lot of feedback that we'll then take some time to incorporate, bring a revision back to the select board, and hopefully be ready to approve it by March so that we can move it on for town meeting. And so throughout that, we'll send, I think I noted in here, we'll send stuff to the finance committee and the select board in public before the meetings when we get to that point. And I'm happy to answer anything else, but just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page timeline-wise.
Yeah, this is very helpful. Obviously, we have to figure out what we're going to do in February, and we're going to talk about that. And we have time set aside to talk about it, which is, but I think it looks very straightforward.
Just a question in terms of ARPA money, which is quite a significant amount of money. I'm just wondering if there are some initial thoughts in terms of how, from you and staff in terms of, I know we've talked here previously about our marginal Wi-Fi and 5G stuff. We've talked about infrastructure issues. We've talked, what are some of the other items that we've talked about, kind of big picture? And so I'm just wondering if there's things that you're thinking, you and staff are thinking about, so we can be thinking about that in over the course of the next month in terms
Sure. I can throw out a few broad thoughts now, and then I think we'll do a few more when we do our workshop, which is, it's only a week before, but some of the broad thoughts. So we had a couple things that we had identified in the budget last year, which I can pull up as well. And so that was about $300,000 worth of proposed spending from ARPA in last year's budget. And then what we're looking at is a pretty big chunk of that likely to be for resurfacing and reconstruction projects, roads, sidewalks, really downtown Lebanon Street, and kind of what that project potentially turns out to be. That's going to be, it's not going to pay for the whole thing, obviously, but might help us a little bit. That's a piece. Figuring out ways to expand internet access. There's a few different ways we're looking at doing that, potentially with some public hotspots of our own, potentially some partnerships with other stakeholders in the area. But there's sort of a focus looking a little bit at the downtown, but also looking at especially the north end of town where there really is bad service and no internet. And our IT director is going to a bunch of meetings and kind of working with some regional, some other towns on that. Let's see, there was, pull up my list, there was a couple other.
How much money was it again?
It was 1.2 million all together. And we had identified, I think we have 965,000 left over from last year, or from the budget. Some more things around the downtown, like more public space type stuff and pedestrian friendly things, outdoor seating. We've had a couple equipment requests from police and fire. I just want to do a little bit more work on before we bring that. And then we're looking at a few ways of maybe doing some technology that can help increase public participation and access to things. So digitizing records, additional OWL or Zoom setups here or at the Howe Library or other buildings that use that. So potentially more laptops or tablets for staff and volunteers to be able to use, some things like that. So that's sort of the general taken.
That's a lot for 965,000.
Yeah, I agree. We're
So
trying to
it'd be
really
good for us to really be thinking hard. So
Been several
good.
times over. We have had a lot of numerous requests over numerous years of citizens, and we ought to really tag them, of really making sure that everybody gets the internet. There've been residents in outlying regions with the end of mile challenge, and maybe even before we soup up our downtown, we have to make sure that the families living end of mile don't have to do their homework research at the house.
Or at the library with little kids.
At 7 o'clock at night.
Are there any restrictions on use of the fund? Is there anything about supplanting what would be spent through the normal course of budgets, etc.?
So there are a lot of restrictions. That's not one of them. And in fact, there's a category specifically for replacing, basically doing that. But it's stuff that the priorities that we got from NHMA were things such as projects that improve the ability for staff and or residents to do things remotely, such that if there was another health emergency and people had to be, like, basically to make that work a little better. They really like those sort of projects. So remote participation, tools that allow staff to work remotely, those are good things. Expanding internet access and closing the digital divide, definitely good things. Things that support economic development or business development, like in the downtown, good things.
Pardon me, but when you say they like that.
Oh, the federal government.
Okay, and so the implication there is that approval of these projects is contingent upon the federal government liking it. So help us understand what they like. Is it pandemic related that they like?
Yeah, these are the. I mean, they have. It's a couple hundred pages of guidance, and so it can be a little. It's a little complicated to make sense of. NHMA has done a really good job of like distilling some of that down into kind of the high priority projects. And Ellen and I spent some time with the NHMA finance person. We looked at other towns and what they spent money on. We looked at the federal regulations. She's seen what's happened throughout New Hampshire with different towns and what projects have gotten a really big thumbs up and which ones they kind of said, all right, that qualifies, but we don't love it. And then which ones are the ones that they really, the things, and in most general terms, things that can be done quickly, things that have a tangible value. We're trying to find ways that we can do the most bang for the buck with the money that we spend, which is part of the issue with the North End internet, because the cost per household, if we were to try and spend the money on actually connecting, we've used the whole money on one or two a couple households. We have a few ideas of ways to try to help with that. There's some grant money that was announced recently through Congresswoman Custer's office as well, and so we're trying to look at that. There's a few pieces, and we're trying to tie a few pieces together to do something. And I have talked to a number of North Hanover residents.
And East.
It's not. And so we're also in conversations with Line 5, we're in conversations with a couple of the broadband companies, and there's a regional group that meets that our IT director, Corey, has been going to. So we're kind of plugged into that, and they've mapped out where the deficiencies are, but it's just that last piece to run the fiber is super expensive. So we're trying to figure out ways, like potentially with grants for cell phone antenna boosters for homes, so that even maybe it costs $50,000 or $100,000 to connect a house, but if we can help someone a little bit so that they can maybe use a hotspot at home and they couldn't before, at least that's better than nothing, and is at 100 times less of a cost. So we're trying to figure out ways to fit basically as much as we can into this project. The health preparedness related things, that's a few of the requests that are coming from police and fire. Anything that creates public spaces or outdoor seating are good things. So that, again, if there were restrictions, that businesses can still operate and people can sit outside and gather outside. I can send you the guidance document if you're curious. It's definitely
I'm just thinking we're about to embark on a capital prioritization process, right? And on this one, it feels like this is just a jump ball for like $1 million. So I'm just trying to understand the process of prioritizing. I mean, it sounds like there are some discrete things that they like.
Right.
So I'm just trying to understand our priorities versus what they like, because I don't understand what they like.
Well, if there's an NHMA guidance document.
Yeah, I think there is, and we had like a 1 or 2 hour conversation with them where we went through the ideas that we were thinking about. They went through other towns' ideas, and we're trying to make sure we're doing stuff that is going to get the best kind of reaction, ideally.
And Alex, even if they're not quite excited about an idea that we think we really need, that's not going to slow us down.
Right.
It's just their judgment, their value judgment. And
Right.
we might have a different judgment.
As long as it qualifies.
Right. No,
right,
I understand
right.
that difference.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Okay, yeah, I'll send some stuff around about that. Does everybody want that, or just?
How big is it?
It's the NHMA one.
No, I don't want the
I think is a lot shorter.
Yeah, NHA, and I wouldn't mind having.
If you have
Okay.
a synopsis, that'd be
And
great.
if there's
Sure.
a wish list so far, just so we can start thinking about it.
A wish list is the term we used to always use.
Yeah, we're not quite ready to send the list yet, but because we're still working on a few things, but
Okay.
get it as soon as we can. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us to 6B, which is Town Committee /board organization terms and membership. Alex and I had we had a discussion about this. Are you done typing? Phew.
Oh, yes.
You mentioned this in your memo as well. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, we're just looking to sort of tighten up this a little bit, just make sure all the committees have, bylaws that are consistent between different committees and boards. I know Bike Walk's done a lot of work lately on getting some things updated, and there's a couple other committees that I think are a little further out of date. And then the hope is that when we have the new staff person in, which should be pretty soon, that they can just take a look at everything, make sure they're organized kind of in sections for the boards that the select board has authority over, that we would then determine those things. And then for the boards that we don't have, like planning board and zoning board, right, we might send off and say, hey, it's up to you, or maybe we send it to Rob and just say, hey, we've done some reorganizations here if this is any value for you all. But at least our committees and advisory committees to get all the term, we have lists of members, but not all when they were appointed, when their terms are expiring. And it would just be nice to get that all kind of organized. And then also, once we get a spreadsheet of all of that, put all that on the website, just so it's a little, who's on what committee, when are their terms expiring, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's
so it's sort of a housekeeping item.
I've been confused on that issue on some of the boards. Thank you for.
I have too.
And that skips us down to item C, which is the Allen Street block party and use. Did you have video, right?
Yeah, I did, though. I'm actually not sure the internet's working in here, so it may not work right now. But I did put a bunch of pictures in the packet, and the recap is just wanted to, we talked about it a little bit last time. We got 16 surveys back with a lot of positive feedback about it. Also, Parks and Rec sent me, they posted some stuff on Instagram, I think, and got a bunch of positive comments from people saying things like, please close this permanently. And so just kind of enjoy getting that feedback. Promise it wasn't me or Jenny that planted those. But
well,
people...
I got a few that said don't do that permanently, so just to counter that.
Okay, so we got, all right, so we'll get those,
just to make sure, and
I've no doubt it would be 100% supported.
16 surveys don't really.
No,
I mean, before we go there, it sounds like I was out of town, I was unable to make it. It sounds like the event was quite a success in the sense that people had a lot of fun. The pictures are lovely. The weather managed to hold out, I think, for most of the day, didn't it? And this does fit in nicely to some of the things you've been talking about, Alex, which is creating more open space for congregation. Working on the plaza in front of the town hall here is another example of that. Where we go with this is a little uncertain, but there's another event planned around Halloween, I believe.
Yep.
Midtown. What were those dates again, please?
October 25th? 27th and 28th. So the Friday and Saturday of Halloween weekend.
I will be able to do that. And plans moving forward, there are a lot of different ways we could go with this. We could have occasional events like this. We could never do it again. We could never do this again. We could have occasional events like this, planned events, which seemed everybody loved, all the way to contemplating a change in traffic patterns and whatnot. So that needs to be a thorough discussion involving, all the businesses, and public hearings and whatnot, if we do ever end up thinking of going down that route. But I think it's just an awesome idea to get going. And the ones in the fall that we did, the chili bake-offs in the middle of winter, were always a lot of fun too.
The Home for the Holidays?
Yeah.
And we're doing that again in December. So the goal is to have a summer event, a fall event, and then a winter event, and just sort of see how it looks in different seasons. And then when we start getting ready during the capital budgeting process, the odds, if we're discussing, for example, a Main Street reconstruction, we've talked a little bit about sort of lumping in a little bit of Allen Street and just seeing if there's some things that we can do on Allen Street if we're thinking that we're likely to do more of this. whether regularly or permanently, that we would have some infrastructure out there, perhaps posts set in the concrete so that we can bolt lights or speakers or rain, whatever stuff that we can do, which we can't really do right now. And so just wanted to make sure that, from our standpoint on the staff side, we're sort of, kind of creeping along in that direction, thinking about, how can we do more with this space from a pedestrian and kind of public usage standpoint.
Right. I actually think that, sorry, may I
Oh,
speak?
go ahead, yeah.
I think the other thing we should be looking at is if we were to shut it down permanently, I was there, I thought it was great. And it was warm.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, this is not a sunny street.
Right.
And if we want to see more housing and, more height in the area, this is an ideal location should we change the zoning and go up. And it will be dark and cold for a good 7 months here. So before we do anything too radical, like closing the street, I'd like to understand what it would do to traffic patterns for vehicles as well as pedestrians and bikes. So,
Yeah.
but I think the way we're going, where we're testing, how it works and people's engagement, I think that's a really great approach to do that.
Great.
And whether we would have, if that was something that happened all the time, if it was permanently closed, if we would have the excitement and engagement. And I think those are just things we should try to get answers for. So, or understand before we shut the street.
Makes sense, yeah.
We use the royal phrase, we. Truth is that none of this happens without the incredible energy, enthusiasm, and hard work of 3 or 4 members of the rec department. And they are fantastic. So it really is the energy of the rec department that we're doing, or even town staff, that causes all of this to happen. So
They are town staff.
I mean,
and they do have
in
other
this
things
building.
they should be doing.
Yes.
They are not,
I just want to
that they may not
recognize.
be doing because they're event planning.
I'm publicly recognizing their
Great.
efforts.
Yeah, agreed. And you've been in so many of the business meetings. I mean, a lot of business owners, Kieran and Allie over, still north and south, put a lot of time in helping to organize the event too.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
The volunteers, very helpful.
I was gonna say, I thought it was awesome and it was very lively and so many people just kept stumbling across it and going in who didn't know about it. I thought that was like a neat thing, both on Friday and Saturday. And there's so many little kids for the magic show. Obviously, if you program a space, that makes a huge difference in creating a place. This idea of designing it as a flex space sounds just really smart to me, because even if it's not closed permanently, or even if we're doing more trials, then we could do that more easily. And I think there's something really interesting about what Joanna was talking about with like the caverns. You definitely feel it, and there's something that worked really well with the lights and decorations, and I could really see this being an art alley, like that it's it would lend itself to interesting art installations or things in the air or other types of programming that use the verticalness of the space. It's just a really interesting space because it very much feels like a patio space, I think, because it's between these buildings. The only feedback I got from the restaurant owners was that it maybe would have been easier if the booth was on the other side so they could see their people coming in and out, rather than have their backs. And then they thought that the space closer to the restaurants, especially with the patio in front of Still North, got kind of negated, and that was more space we could have used if we had the booths on the other side of the street. So that was just a small little bit.
Great.
Yeah, we'll ask them about that.
Yeah. And then I had some residents ask for some seating options near the band. Just because if it is a public space, not all of them either wanted to go into the bar with their children, or their children were up there, but the parents were sitting on the curbs or leaning against the wall. So it would have been nice to also have some tables or seating in front of the band, in front of the stage, which was sometimes a band, sometimes a magic show, sometimes, other stuff. And just sort of outside of the roped off area.
We intend to have some more tables outside of the dining area next time, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were on the Main Street side, but there weren't on the stage side.
We need to buy some more tables.
So if you were to contemplate closure, would there be an exit from the north end of the parking area? Would that still be a left-hand turn to get out to School Street?
I'd say we're super early in thinking about what that would look like, but the options that we've talked about include turning the other part of Allen Street into two-way traffic, so that you could come in and out that way. And that may or may not be wide enough to allow two-lane traffic and parking, not sure. But the two-lane traffic, we've gotten some, it's all still pretty early, but just trying to think about if we do cut off that inlet to the parking lot. I will say also, and we've talked about this a little bit, is that the point where Allen Street actually meets Main Street is not a super safe intersection. And I've actually stopped using it. That's usually how I come into the town hall parking lot, and I've just stopped using it because the number of times that I've been trying to make a left in, especially in the morning and there's traffic, and then you're stopped in the crosswalk, and then if the bus is there, I mean, it's just really kind of a mess. And then you go, and then someone's crossing, so you stop and now cart, it's just really not great. And so there's part of me that would almost love to just get rid of that, regardless of creating an event space on Allen Street, but just that I've seen a lot of people, especially when I sit out here sometimes at our new picnic tables in front of Town Hall, and I see people kind of stop and start, and but we've got a little bit of work to do as far as kind of looking at all of that.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on to another discussion item, which is basically this room here and office space in the town hall. You did give us a little bit of background, Alex, appreciate that. Do you want to delve into that a little bit?
Yeah, we're just trying to, we're making some staffing changes, in some exciting ones. We have a rental housing inspector that we are hiring for. We have another position in the clerk's office that we're hiring for. We do not really have, we have the retention and recruitment HR position, which may be only temporary, and that person's not full-time in the office. But there's a couple other things that we're doing that will potentially add a few more people into town hall, and we don't have the space. We don't have desks for a couple of those people. So we are looking at moving some things around and making it work a little bit, but those are probably not permanent solutions. So one of the conversations that we've been looking into, or one of the ideas we've been looking into, is the use of this room, and splitting it or doing something else with it entirely. I know we've talked a little bit about that. We've talked to Hal. We're looking at some other options and just trying to see what would work and what could be done here. And so the needs on our end are a few more staff workstations, but also we only have one meeting room in the building, which is this room. And so often, for example, is it Mondays at, I think, Rob's office? You guys eat lunch in here usually most Mondays? Is it Mondays or?
We eat in here when everybody's present.
When you're able to, yeah. And so we just don't have a lot of, like when the auditors were here last week, I think we had 7 or 8 people in my office for a meeting, which was a little tight. So we're trying to figure out some ways to create 2 meeting rooms in the building, like a larger one and a smaller one, but not large enough for meetings like this. So looking into the options of where those could go. And we have begun those conversations with the how, and just sort of exploring that, which could potentially work pretty well. Scheduling, logistics, AV equipment, things of that nature. We wouldn't have the same large.
So just to be clear, one thing you're contemplating is moving most board meetings, select board, planning board, and all the other ones down to the how.
Potentially.
Into that large room, I assume.
The mayor room, the Zoom room,
right.
Yeah. That's one of the options, yeah. And so we've been just thinking about that a little bit, but I didn't want to go too far without bringing it up with everybody. And if people, if there was a sort of hard no, we have to stay in this room, or if we were open to just exploring it a little bit more and just trying to see. I think this will be making an internal renovation to this room would be the cheapest way to basically add space to the building versus anything else. We are looking at a few other ideas of moving other offices around too. So there's a bunch of stuff on the table, but didn't want to keep going on this without everybody being aware.
And in the day of everybody working off their trusty laptops,
Right.
the idea of desk space isn't as crucial. I mean, the whole idea of shared workspace works for a lot of companies, and it could work for us if people had the feeling that they could, lift up their laptop and go.
Yeah. How does that tie in with kind of the whole employee satisfaction work that we're doing? Because I mean, looking at flex days and so in terms of your actual 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, desk needs, is that, does that factor into shifting here?
So I would say it's probably not going to be a huge difference. I think for some staff there's definitely a difference, but it's mostly, so like for example, our HR staff and our finance staff, I mean, they have documents out that can't be part of like needs to be in a locked room.
Right.
The clerk and supervisors and all of that, I mean, things often have to go back in the vault at the end of the night. There is a little bit of opportunity for that, and we're kind of doing that in the clerk's office where the clerk and the supervisors are sharing that. There's 4 people basically in one office, and that works okay. It gets a little tight when it's like election time and everybody's actually in there. And so it's tough because it's hard to not, the main thing that will make a difference here, I think, is actually not the 4-day work weeks, but is the digitizing of paper files and getting file cabinets out of spaces. They just take up so much room. And we have a lot of them in the building. And like, if you look down in the lobby, I mean, it's all file cabinets all around the walls, and they're waist high because you can't reach the really tall ones. So I think that is potentially going to make a really big difference, and we've talked about consolidating some, digitizing some things. That might open up a little bit of space, but just the way the offices are laid out, like we don't have like shared, although that's actually one of the ideas of how to use this room is to make this move multiple different functions into one room. But right now, basically everybody's in a separate spot, and so it's challenging. Like if I don't know, if there was an employee in planning who wasn't there for a day, there's really no one who could go work at that desk. Potentially, it's just kind of hard. Or same if someone in the front lobby was out, if you sit there, people are going to be knocking on your window for help to do your motor vehicles all day. And so there's a little bit of flexibility there, but I would say not a ton with just the way, with everybody being in sort of like a different room currently. So that would take a little more. But I do think we're going to have less of a need for office space per person in the future, but that's mostly related to digitizing files.
Sorry, go ahead.
Do we need to have an architect come in and do some planning?
It's possible. We'll see. We'll do a little of the conversations with our facilities staff and public works during the capital plan. We'll do a little bit more work on this and get some dollar values and things. So we may get to a point where certainly if we were doing an exterior renovation, we would need an architect or an engineer. Doing something inside of this room, I'm not 100% sure we do. We are doing we are collecting surveys and data from all of our departments about their needs and programming of the space for a few different purposes actually, and this would be one of them is for that. Because I do think as I talk to employees about moving things, I'll learn more about how it's set up the way it is, and do we really need that? Okay, well, actually, nobody even wants us over here, but nobody asked. So I think we can probably find some efficiencies there. But 90% of the time, this room is open, and so that was the sort of biggest. I don't know.
Easy
Yeah,
hit.
there used to be 2 other conference rooms in the building.
Right.
Long on, there was one over by the restroom and down in the basement.
Am I understanding correctly, the idea is to potentially make this like a more functional conference room?
There's a few different ideas. One of them is that there's about 5 or 6 staff whose offices could move into this room potentially, and it would also allow a couple departments to work more closely together, which would be a big benefit. And it would also get one of our department heads who is in an office that doesn't have any windows in the basement into a room with windows, which I
Yeah, I
think
didn't know she was
all
down there without a window.
employees should have a window,
That's
in my
yucky.
opinion.
So, we do this often where I work, where you have like a third party
Mhm.
with your various departments, and that their expertise is space planning and could do layouts for you and deal with code issues, because I don't think, looking at the ceilings, it doesn't look like this is has a sprinkler system in it.
I don't think the building does, yeah.
So there may be code issues, so I guess knowing your workload and guessing what Peter and your facilities, given staffing issues of late, it may be money well spent to bring in
Yeah.
somebody to help.
Right,
And as, like the library did, they
Right.
brought in a space planner and architect to talk to the staff, find out what their needs are, find out if there are opportunities to, share space, or what it would take in order to share offices, or
Right.
why you never could share an office. And with all of the the requirements of what we all agree is, people should have light, they should have natural light. There's some basic tenets there that, we
Desk
wanna-
and a chair maybe too.
yeah, comfort, ergonomically, all of these things. But I personally think it's money well spent up front before you go down too deeply into, well, if we cut this up and move to the house, which, I think using what space we have, I'm a firm believer in that. And so, but I would encourage us to spend a little money up front before we start putting up walls.
Yeah, I agree.
for sure. And we're not at the point, this is just sort of making sure everybody's aware that we're just gonna keep looking at it and might do things like that. Just so that if you guys saw a bill for a consultant for, to say, why are we bringing people in? So we've still got a few months before we're gonna get into, but,
Okay.
but I appreciate that support for bringing in someone. I don't know if we have money to do it, but we might, and I also tend to agree that if we can have someone come in and help us with that and take the load off the staff, it's
Yeah.
helpful.
And get in as,
I had
Right.
just 2 questions. I know the library in the pre-COVID would host meetings at night. That's an okay for them thing to do?
Yeah, we've gone through the schedules with them and but we have more to do there, but most of the meetings that they have are not past 7.
Right, and so it just isn't working with security or something to get it back open? Or
I think she's
keep it
asking if
open?
we go to 1 AM like we did a couple of.
Oh yeah, we'll figure out the logistics and, I'll have a key, we'll know what we're allowed to do, and there'll only be certain people who can use the Zoom equipment.
Okay.
That we'll lock it, we figure out all those procedures and
Yeah. And then if we digitize everything, is the idea that the paper stuff moves off-site, or are we liberated from paper? In which
Ooh.
case, do we need a digital future plan? Because digital stuff doesn't last forever.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
it seems like this is very prime real estate. It would make sense to move it off-site. But that would be another thing that it would be probably good to get some idea of cost estimates and what that would involve if we were moving stuff, or if we're digitizing it, what that looks like in the future, knowing that digital preservation is another bugaboo.
So yeah, a couple responses. One is I would definitely not use the word everything for what we're digitizing. It's going to be, considerably more limited than that. And there's a few different ways that we can approach projects like this. One is looking at basically creating systems that allow us to digitize going forward without really scanning stuff going back, which is really the expensive part, because it's just very there's really no way to automate that. Someone has to sit there and scan stuff. And a lot of the files, especially if we're talking about planning files and stuff, are weird shapes and sizes. So you need a special scanner, and it just takes a long time to scan all of that. But that's also really important to do, because if you don't digitize the old files, then you can't actually move anything out. And then, so that's one question. Another question is, if we're digitizing for state records retention compliance, or if we're just digitizing for easier access for records, the state does allow digital storage as the record, but they have to be in a certain file format, which we can do. And then that would allow you to destroy the paper records. Or you can scan the paper records, but keep the paper records, and the paper record is your actual version. And that could, for example, go off-site somewhere. Or you could, if you do it properly and we get the right system in place and we scan the files into the right format, we could also theoretically just destroy the files completely and not need to relocate them. So there's a few different thoughts there, but yeah, I mean, basically the whole half of the basement is just files.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the offices, if you go back into planning or down in my office, or Kerry's, I mean, every wall is just file cabinets, just all around. So if we could make a little bit of a difference there, I think it would actually make a surprisingly big difference in the building. So there's a bunch there. We have a little bit of ARPA money designated to help with some of this, because that will also help. That means that we can take public records and we can put them and make them available online through a document management system, so that, instead of someone submitting a right to know request, they can just go online and find, basically everything. And this is another project that the person in the clerk's office that we're hiring, this will be one of the projects that will be on their radar as well.
Great, I think we can wrap that up. Thank you very much.
Yes, just one quick comment. So a quick thought on the records retention. If there are infrequently accessed documents, I wonder if you could already be putting them off-site, as long as you have a record of what's in each box, you could then recall those boxes. I know some businesses do that.
Surprisingly, we have actually a ton of records off-site already.
Oh, okay.
And they're down at the water treatment plant in a locked room, and so we do that a little bit. Probably not everything is there, but yeah. So it's kind of incredible how much paper we own.
And I would just encourage you to, if you're thinking about using this space somewhere in the building, to have, a decent-sized conference room.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
We'd be looking at one conference room, like a 15-person room that has some like audio, video conferencing capabilities, but not set up quite the way it is here for streaming, on Jam. And then a smaller, like 4 to 6 person room. That would be
So,
Yeah, that's right, we need a
Yeah.
planner
yeah,
to help you.
because not only that, you can, I'm guessing over time, the people who don't need to be here are already not here. But, does the parking division need to have offices? So, really thoroughly ask, the big questions. And so you or your staff don't have to, and oftentimes that's a good thing, that you're
Yeah.
on the committee, but you have a staff consultant to do
Right,
that
right.
work for you. So,
All right, we're gonna move on. That was a good discussion. And we're moving to business requiring action. The first is we're tabling the minutes of September 11 to the next meeting. We'll get to them then. And that brings us to our consent agenda, which is not very full today. The first one is donations to the Etna Library. I'll read them after we approve, hopefully, the consent agenda. And then appointments of new deputy, EMD stands for Emergency
management director.
Thank you. That would be Alex Torpey, Town Manager, Peter Kulbacki, Public Works Director, Charlie Dennis, Chief of Police, and Doug Hackett, the Hanover Police Communications Coordinator. So I move the consent agenda as I just read. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All, call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that passes by unanimously. And just to recognize the wonderful donations that we've received for the Etna Library, the Etna Library has received 2 donations in the amount of $300 each from the New Hampshire Humanities Council in support of ongoing programs at the library. Every little bit helps, and we greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much. And that gets us out of item number 7, which was, and down to item number 8, which is report and communications, 25 minutes. Town manager report. I can't remember, you were not going to do a look.
Nope, I got mine for this one.
This
Yeah,
one, okay,
yeah.
great.
High level though, because we can read it.
What's that?
I said, I think we've all read it, so it's good and high level would be great.
Yeah, he's also
Sure.
reading it for the folks out
Oh,
in
for the
TV
folks in
land.
TV land, right, so.
Is that what they said in Romper Room or something?
The New Hampshire, was Romper Room a New Hampshire thing, or was that?
No, we live in
Speaking
Connecticut.
of,
land.
TV land, I think we should try hard not to have acronyms in our agenda, just so people can follow easily.
Is there one in specific on
Oh,
this one?
just like the EMD.
Oh,
like-
because it is,
He read it.
I think it's
Yeah, yeah,
defined
he
right
did.
there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
I thought it was medical director first.
Yeah.
Anyway, great, Alex,
Okay.
take it away.
All right, so a couple upcoming events, which I'm going to try and do more of this in each of the reports. It's going to take a little while to get up to speed with everything that's happening, but there is the inauguration of Sion Bylock this Friday, which is exciting. And I put the link for, there's a whole bunch of different events happening throughout the week and day there. I know I'll be there. There's some a lunch during the day as well, and I think there's a ceremony at 3 p.m. We have our Allen Street event coming up on October the 27th, 28th. Friday there will be a trick-or-treat kind of stuff, and then there's going to be a costume contest and party on Saturday. Outdoor food and drink and all that kind of stuff all weekend. We'll have a little more information about that too beforehand. The next is the Hanover Police Department will be hosting a touch truck event on September 30th from 11 to 1 at the race school, and this is to help raise awareness as part of their annual childhood cancer awareness event. And I put a little more information about that. Really great initiative that they do in the report as well. So by the time the report went out, I didn't have the HR numbers, but I do have them now. So if you give me 1 second. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had 4 hires, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 people leave work. The 4 hires. Let's see. We have Elizabeth Craig in Parks and Rec. Tessa Johnson at Howe Library, Logan Maas at DPW, and Tamara Krudermarsh at Parks and Rec. So welcome to all of our new wonderful employees. Our retention and recruitment study, I mentioned a little bit ago, but we are starting to get to kind of ramp up time on our end. We're starting to get the preliminary market data back. Our consultants from UMass are doing some analysis with us. We're getting prepared for getting all the feedback together, reconciled, proposed ideas, the upcoming discussions with the department heads and with you all later in October, the beginning of the conversations with the collective bargaining units. So it's going to be kind of a crazy couple months, but also pretty excited about some of the ideas that we're sort of landing on there. And again, I mean, the sort of staff cooperation that we have had, and people's feedback has been really great and helpful. And as I talk to like other, town managers about what we're doing here, people are, I don't know, it's not every day that, we have our town HR department and that go out and put all these together, and I've gotten a lot of nice feedback from staff about it as well. I mean, we've gotten a lot of good constructive criticism, but we have also gotten a lot of really good ideas. Now if I can get one of these computers to work, I will show you the next thing.
Is this the movie? I wanted to see that.
Yeah, and if this little doohickey here doesn't work, I have another one that definitely will. And I'm going to go grab it because this is so worth seeing.
Wait,
if you give me 1 second. Yeah, sorry about that.
Looking for a demo?
I've got it. I just need a USB-C to HDMI. Oh, look at this.
A man for all seasons.
He is. Thank you, Ralph.
All right.
Yay.
Okay. Oh. There we go. Okay. All right. So this is the recruitment video that we're getting ready to include in the search materials for the fire chief that we're about to embark on. This was filmed entirely by Matt Ufford, a sergeant at the police department, 22 years. In the last few years, he has discovered a passion for film and made which is pretty cool. He made a really great profile. He's made a couple profiles of some of the officers at the police department, and a few of us saw that and said, hey, this is really good. Can we get you doing more stuff? And we talked about the fire chief video, and he volunteered to do it.
Can we just dim the lights? Is that?
Yes, I can go to the lights here.
Thank you.
So we get some sound. That sounds like it's going to be loud. Thank you. Let's see.
Blast it. This is good cinematography.
It's great. So it's definitely coming out of my computer, so I'm going to just try it here. But it does not seem to. Here we go. Okay. Now it should work. One more time.
There you go.
My name is Elder Ferreira. I've been in the fire service for a little bit over 20 years, and I'm a firefighter, AEMT, in the town of Hanover. We're fire and EMS, but we do a lot of specialties, and that's something that I do love. We work a lot on swift water, we work with a dive team, we work with ropes, high angle, low angle, wilderness rescues, ice rescue, and throughout my first year, I've already experienced not only emergencies, but a lot of training in all that diversity. No matter where you are in Hanover, you'll find people outdoors doing anything you can think of. Biking, cross-country skiing, depending on the time of the year, walking dogs, families. There's countless hiking trails. It is the spirit of Hanover.
Folks here work really well together. It's a small department, which creates an environment where I believe that the camaraderie here is strong and truly feels like a family. We participate in quarterly tech rescue drills with our partners, our mutual aid partners, and it's unique in that our relationship with them is pretty seamless when it comes to operating on an emergency scene.
So any of the large functions we have on campus or in town, we work a lot with the college and their administration. They're actively involved in our IAP plans and event coordination, and between the fire department, police department, and the college, really work well together to come up with a good plan for these large events that have a big impact on our town.
The college is very heavy on fire prevention, which makes our job much easier. It's a very safe campus, and they'll do anything they can to make it a safe campus.
It's always good to get out there, interact with the community, kind of pitch what we're doing, so we have that support to back us as we're looking for these new resources that we need to get each day for the different types of calls that we're responding to.
So I think the one thing that Hanover Fire Department does really well for the community of Hanover is we're really proficient with our water rescue. 80% of the department is trained as swift water rescue technicians, if not at a higher level. I really think that the water rescue aspect of Hanover Fire Department really gives a lot back to the community as a whole.
I think it's important to note that we've kind of built our reputation, more so with a lot of the technical rescue aspect. We're getting called from different agencies in the state, and even throughout the state of New Hampshire and Vermont.
College has their own EMS program. They have students who run, it's called Dartmouth EMS, and they will respond to calls on campus. we work really closely with our medical director. He is actually one of our call members. That's been great to get us in the hospital more and also get their training with us more. And part of that is all new ER residents that go through our discharge actually come and ride with us. Something that I want to highlight in this organization is the mindset of wellness and physical well-being of every individual in our organization. And the union has a program where it runs across the classes 3 times a week for every firefighter on duty or off duty to participate and maintain their physical aspect also. We have other resources where we can that we can access on duty also to maintain focus on our mental well-being as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Torpey and I'm the town manager here in beautiful Hanover, New Hampshire. Now if you looked at a map, you might think that Hanover is a small town. And you wouldn't be wrong. Part of what is great about living and working in the area around here is that we are part of a small but vibrant community. But Hanover's impact on the region is significant and cannot be overstated. Whether it's our regional communication center that provides dispatching services to over 60 public entities in 20 towns throughout New Hampshire and Vermont, or whether it's our fire department that is frequently called on to provide mutual aid with our neighbors or our technical rescue, dive, and swiftwater rescue teams. There's a lot that is happening here. We have a new human resources director, a new finance director, and I've been here for just about a year. And all of those things together are adding up to all sorts of really exciting changes. But there's a lot going on beyond that. We're here in downtown Hanover, just about 2 blocks from Dartmouth College, and within 2 blocks you can find almost 30 restaurants. And so it's a rural area, but there's also the vibrancy that makes living in Hanover and working in Hanover so fun. Now, I mentioned I moved up here about a year ago. Where I'm from in New Jersey, the town I grew up in, I actually was the mayor of. And while I was mayor, I was also a volunteer emergency medical technician. And having the experience at the 30,000-foot level and having the experience with kind of boots on the ground gave me a really good perspective into what was happening in the community and what we needed to do in the organization itself. We're looking for a fire chief with a similar background and a similar mindset. Somebody who's been on the 24-hour shifts, who's fought the fires, who's been in the trenches, but also somebody who's got long-term vision and who's got the strategic management ability to take an already fabulous department with really incredible people who work here and continue to move that forward into the future. So I'm really glad that you're interested in looking at this job ad, and we're really excited that you might be coming up here to be our next fire chief in Hanover. If you have any questions, we'd love to talk to you in the meantime, and I hope to get to meet many of you throughout the search process.
That's excellent.
So we're pretty excited about that. It's
Yeah.
just
Excellent.
we've got a really unique department that does a lot, and the goal was to try and show that a little bit.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. So give a nice hand to Matt Ufford for filming and
He should,
editing and producing, and I mean,
He's got a future.
right? Yeah. On top of being a police officer full time, knows how to. I mean, that's amazing.
Nice job.
So, so we're going to be getting ready to post that in the that job ad in the next week. And we'll open that to internal candidates first and then external candidates, and we expect the whole thing to take about 3 to 5 months to do that. Okay, so let's see, what else? The budget stuff we already talked about. Allen Street we already talked about. Also, just a few report outs from our kind of other downtown Hanover related activities. We did have our first scavenger hunt last weekend on September 10th, which is bringing new students at Dartmouth into the downtown. So this was one of the low-hanging fruit ideas that came up in our meetings with downtown business owners that Dartmouth has been really great in participating in. So that brought a couple hundred students right into the downtown. We're hoping that we can continue that as well. Also wanted to thank John Pepper and Beloco for donating some of the white Adirondack chairs that are now on one part of our lawn, and we may add a few more on the other. So those were on Beloco's side, but they have a bunch of bistro tables that don't quite work on the grass, so they added a few more tables there and gave us the chairs. And one of the ideas we've talked about is basically having community groups or classes or things like that at the schools adopt a chair and then paint it in like whatever way they think is kind of cool. We had such great success with the Appalachian Trail mural in front of the R.W. Black Center. And just, is there any other way to do things like that where we can just add art? So we're talking about that in our downtown business meetings, but wanted to make sure to thank John and Beloco there as well. And certainly if people have feedback about, hey, I wish you had X type of seating or Y type of seating, we're still trying to kind of figure out what we want to do next year. So if you hear of any feedback from people in the community or anything like that, feel free to send them our direction. Moving on to some housing related stuff. We are continuing our conversation about the Mink Brook Community Workforce Housing. Just wanted to keep that sort of updated on the report. So we do have that identified for non-public tonight, and our attorney will be joining us as well. We're also working on creating a summary of the Mink Brook Forest Management Plan, which is a light 450 pages, I think. And so that makes the ARPA guidance look like, so we're working on just trying to get that down to make sure that all of us and all the members of the public are just kind of generally aware of kind of what the select board's purview is on the housing front and what the Conservation Commission's purview is on the conservation front. Next is Rob's office has been working a lot on the rental housing registration forms, and while we are interviewing people for the inspector position, at least starting to soon get properties registered in the system and all of that. So that's sort of moving forward there as well. We're interviewing those candidates currently. I thought it would just be worth including these couple articles about the change of public opinion about zoning that I thought was interesting because the change was I think drastic is almost an understatement. These came out, and I think I read this in Daybreak. I feel like everything, but I find this interesting. What's that?
Set a plug for Daybreak.
There is, and well, I'll give it even a second plug, which is that I've got an interview, a really great discussion recorded with Rob Gerwitt from Daybreak that's coming out on the Hanover Things podcast soon.
Ooh, it's a preview.
A preview, yes. But I just thought it would be worth noting, and included the links to the studies that were done. But I just thought from 2020 to 2023, the one that jumped out at me the most, I included a screenshot here, which was New Hampshire towns and cities should change their planning and zoning regulations in order to allow more housing to be built. In 2020, 23% of people agreed with that. In 2023, 60% of people agreed with that. I mean, what an incredible shift. So just thought that was worth pointing out. Anybody interested in seeing more about some of those dynamics changing throughout the state can follow those links to learn a little more. A couple other updates. I mentioned a little bit about Hanover Police's annual Childhood Cancer Awareness Month campaign. And so they do that. They've done that since 2021 in September. And the mission of the campaign is to bring awareness to the prevalence of the disease and also help connect people with resources so they can donate or get more involved. And so we have some information about that on our website, and I'm realizing I failed to include the link to that, but you can find that on the police department's pages. So just want to thank Hanover Police for doing that. So if you see a gold ribbon on their car this month, that's what that is for. I mentioned the Touch a Truck event, which is on September 30th as well. I had the quick update about parking stuff that we already talked about a little bit. Traffic safety, we did have our third quarter traffic safety working group meeting. It's going to take me a little while to get all the notes and all that into a digestible format. That will be ready for probably the October 9th meeting, because the October 23rd will be a lot of budget stuff. And then just a reminder that next week from Thursday to Wednesday, I'm going to be in Austin, Texas at the ICMA conference. In that conference, that's the sort of largest professional association for municipal, state, county governments, and got selected as one of the 2 town managers from New Hampshire to represent New Hampshire on a panel of sort of 2 delegates from a bunch of different states talking about kind of innovation and making change within municipal government. So that should be pretty fun. And then I also just included in my report the links to the latest Hanover Happenings interviews. So one was with Susan Edwards, who I think we all know very well, and that was a fun conversation. We talked a little bit about the Garden Club and Sustainable Hanover and Susan's own background and kind of life in Hanover. This was also a bit of a preview for the yard sale. It came out right before that, but if you're interested in hearing a little bit more from one of our longtime volunteers, definitely worth checking that out. And the other interview was with Associate Professor of Business Administration, Adam Kleinbaum at Tuck School. And Adam and his colleagues completed, again, found this in Daybreak, fascinating study where they used functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI technology to scan people's brains while they were given tasks about viewing ambiguous content and then trying to come to consensus and trying to understand the different interpersonal dynamics that happen when people are seeing something they don't agree on and they're trying to move towards agreement. And there were some really interesting implications that came out of that about sort of leadership and consensus building and discussion. So if people are interested in any of that kind of stuff, it's definitely worth checking out. Just love that we are in a community with such interesting, smart people doing, from Susan to Adam and all these other folks. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Alex. That gets us to select board reports. Carrie, do you have anything to report?
No updates on last week.
Nothing to report.
I don't have anything to report. There was a Conservation Commission meeting. I missed it. Bob, I think, was there. Nancy?
Excuse me, I just wanted to alert the citizenry that between now and our next board meeting, there will be a planning board meeting on October 3. So you might want to, if you're interested in any, I don't know what the agenda is yet, but stay tuned to the planning board items on the Town of Hanover website, because it's always detailed well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hi, I wanted to make, just to call out Fall Fest is coming up. I want to make sure people don't miss that. Parks and Rec, in addition to doing all that Allen Street events, are doing another event. That's at Stores Pond on Friday, September 29th. Festivities begin at 4:30, and it's going to feature people from each town department, civic groups, running activities, challenges to eat donuts on a string. The police are going to be there showing off their gear, and cruisers, and the fire department is going to bring their big trucks, and claim they're going to get the kids use the fire hose, and the public works is going to bring their heavy equipment, and Edna and Howe libraries are going to be there with books and crafts, and there should be live entertainment, cider making, craft activities, and food.
You
So
said
that should be,
4:30 on the 29th?
yeah, so that's a Friday. And then Hanover Bike Walk, we just had the walk and roll at Auckland Pond. That went, that was a lot of fun. Dartmouth was actually having a dance performance in the meadow, so we got a lot of people walking by to go see that as well. But I think the highlight was Case showed up from Northern Hanover on a cargo bike with 4 kids. She had 2 kids on the long tail and then 2 kids in the carrier. And then to top that, she had brought a bunch of scooters tucked into that so that they could ride the obstacle course. It was very impressive. As we mentioned, we were working on our bylaws and we're hoping to get direction on like how we can make those stick, and we're planning to present people that can get officially appointed for Hanover Bike Walk so we can do it, proper way. I attended the governor's public hearing for the NHDOT 10-year plan, which was in Lebanon. There's going to be another one in Claremont. Everyone should know if they want to give feedback on the transportation plan, they can write, and this is weird because it's not on their website, but they said it very clearly at the meeting, that they can write to William.E.Watson Jr., Jr., together, at dot.nh.gov before November 3rd for any feedback on what people should invest in transportation. And that meeting was great with Advanced Transit, talking about their extended hours, and the co-op talking about the need for housing and transit. And we have, it came up when I was talking to Advanced Transit that the drivers, and maybe this is a safety committee thing for in the future, the drivers have requested that vehicles aren't parking outside of the, like, a normal parking space on Main Street, because it's hard to navigate, which we do actually get that from people walking or biking or driving as well sometimes, but, and they showed me on Lebanon Street, they draw like a limit line, and anybody parked over that. So it's not even like trying to classify it as compact or subcompact. It's like if you don't fit, you don't park there. Just because a lot of our vehicles are hanging out into the street. The Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Planning Commission said they can do counts over at Dunster Wyeth sometime this month. They're hoping to do it for 2 days during the week. And there is some like back and forth because I think residents think that a lot of people actually walk more on the weekends. They like surveyed other people and they looked at the records and they're like, no, the counts are probably going to work best if we do it during the week. So they said they're going to do them sometime during the week. And then, yeah, for the safety committee, should we just expect like follow-ups in October on the 4 things from the previous Q2, or are we going to hear about Wheelock? Or have there been, like, what should we expect reports on? Are there new things that have come up?
I guess, is there anything specific that you're looking for an update on that you want to make sure we give you an update on beyond?
Yeah, I want to make sure the crosswalk on Wheelock at Old Tuck is addressed.
That was on the agenda, so yeah.
Okay, and the follow-up on, you know, the Etna speed feedback signs, whether, you know, we can put those. I got some good feedback from Lebanon has some that give remote access to data, and Dodd Stacy, which takes a subscription service, which is more than just buying the thing. But Dodd Stacy is interested in, he would pay for that as well, he said, if he could have the data.
Okay.
So just like reiterate that. And so Lebanon has these, and they said it's super effective to sort of pinpoint when to enforce, because they'll get like an hour by hour, you know, rather than just the averages, they'll see when things happen. So that was kind of cool. So I guess it was Etna, Dunster.
Yeah, do you want me to just read out the items that we went through?
Oh, sure.
Because I realized I don't think I circulated like the items that so I'm not going to go through the items, but
Right,
the titles.
yeah, just like
So,
what's on there.
East Wheelock in Verona, pedestrian signal. Balch Hill Road and some gravel road paving requests. Reviewing the crosswalk policy related to Dunster and Wyeth. Speeding on Partridge Road. The Etna Road speed limit. Grassy Road speeding. Some staffing capacity concerns related to transportation planning. The crossing at West Wheelock, that's the one Jenny you just mentioned. Signage policies, like traffic signage policies, and then some visibility issues on the south south roundabout on Lime Road. So that was our agenda.
Great, thank you.
So I think the only one else is just Courier and South are getting repaved. Like the notice just came up this Wednesday, and there had been complete streets plans from 2013 to add like a contra lane to South in front of the Howe to get to the St. Denis path. So as that's restriped, that should be looked at, and sort of similarly, a complete streets issue would be rather than do it just exactly the same, there's a 3-legged crosswalk. That should probably be a 4-legged crosswalk in front of Ramontos and the Howe, because people, want to walk to those places. And then I don't, Rob could correct me, I don't know if we ever came up with a solution for Courier, but there's been identified walk-like problems on Courier with the sidewalk ending. So I'm not sure what could be done.
So that wasn't on, we can talk about it, and then I can come back with some more. I can see if I can get some updates on those for the next meeting too.
Yeah.
If we don't need to go to the full. version.
Yeah, I'm not sure when they're getting repaved, I guess Wednesday night, but I'm not sure when they're getting restriped. For South Street, that restriping, if it could include this contraflow lane that's been, talked about, that'd be cool.
Look into that.
And the other thing that would be awesome is that Jersey barrier kind of sucks. So like if it were, nice, something nice instead of something ugly, right, but how is this beautiful building and we just stuck a Jersey barrier in front of it?
I just
Yeah.
don't like the name.
Are you good?
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
I'm good, thank you.
You're gonna have to
Call
get
it,
over
call it a New
Jersey.
York barrier, I don't know.
New York.
Oh, it is, I'm so sorry.
Jersey barrier.
All right. We're moving to our last item, agenda item. There's been a request for a non-public session for discussion pursuant to RSA 91A:3, Roman numeral 2, A, B, D, and L.
Callahan, aye.
Gracias, yes.
Carter, yes.
Chamberlain, yes?
We are in non-public session. Thank you, officer. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nick.